Hey, it's 11:40 The Bet, 985 The Fan HD2, the Audacy app, YouTube, wherever you're getting us. It's time to get inside this Raiders-Chiefs Monday Night Football game. And joining us now, NFL national writer for Bleacher Report, covers the Raiders for Sportsnot. Of course, he's a part of the Audacy family with the Audacy original podcast, Silver and Black Today. And since it is your second time joining us, good sir, I think we can officially call you a friend of the show, Moton.
Yes.
How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Friend of the show now. Hopefully it stays that way after you hear my food takes, because the Twitterverse doesn't really like what I have to say when it comes to my taste buds. So
Okay, so
hopefully
all
that
right.
sticks.
So hold on, we're gonna get to that in 1 second. And you know me, I'm down for food conversation always. But first and foremost, I just said it, Silver and Black Today, the Audacy original podcast. You are the co-host. Your co-host is Scott Branson. So as we start this off, there's a little bit of tension in my last interview with Scott, and I want to get your perspective. Do you also strangely hate the WNBA as well?
I don't. Me and Scott and I go back and forth on this. I actually have family members who are very much into the WNBA. They're not in the WNBA, but they're very much fans. Go to the games, go to the Liberty games. Scott dunks on the WNBA at the beginning of some shows, and I just kind of sit there like, I'm not as down on the WNBA as he is. I understand his perspective, although I would disagree with him, and I would say the WNBA is a fun thing to watch if that's your thing. Apparently, it's not his.
Which is basketball, just for the record. And also Scott's not here, so I'm not trying to beat him up because he can't defend himself. We're not doing that. I just wanted to get your perspective because it was a little strange last week when he was just like, out or Mark Davis was distracted. I was like, no, he's actually the owner. It's not a distraction. Like, this is a professional team he also owns. But so you don't hate the WNBA. We can get you on the record.
No, I don't. I'm not gonna say I watch all the games, but I'm not in the camp of the WNBA is a waste of time.
All right, Mo, a man with taste and perspective. By the way, the Liberty kind of fire. They should be good next year. But from the WNBA, let's get down to why we really have you here, which is food. So, out of curiosity, where does Chick-fil-A breakfast rank in your breakfast power rankings?
Wow, breakfast power rankings. It would be very high because I'm a big fan of Chick-fil-A. Not a big In-N-Out guy. I will admit I haven't had a lot of In-N-Out, but when I kind of
overrated,
overrated. When I said In-N-Out was kind of mid when I did have it, Twitter kind of had a fit with me. Like I said, I am a Chick-fil-A guy. Chick-fil-A became popular in New York City out here maybe a few years ago. So it's still relatively new out here, but once it got here I actually had it when I was in South Carolina for the first time with my family. So once it got here, I knew I was going to be
it's different in the South too.
Yeah, it's definitely different. Yes.
The honey just tastes better. Also, since you did bring up In-N-Out, here's the deal. In-N-Out, the burger itself is fantastic. For the price, for the value, you can't beat it. Fries, though, throw them in the recycle bin of life, which would actually be a garbage can or an actual recycle bin. The fries are disgusting. For the price, you can't beat it because in perspective, like to me, I really enjoy Five Guys burgers. But at the same time, you're going to Five Guys and you're paying like $20 for a meal just for yourself. They're kind of pricey. So the value in In-N-Out, but all this, like, we're waiting outside the street and causing accidents and causing traffic because everyone's waiting in line. Like, you guys really got to, you got to get it together. And so you are in New York, which leads me to my next question. What are your thoughts on basically baseball trying to whitewash Barry Bonds with all this Aaron Judge crap?
Oh man, that's a loaded question right there. Look, now most people would think Barry Bonds enhanced himself during the time he was hitting all those home runs, and people will say Aaron Judge is clean. Now who knows? I'll say who knows. I can't prove or disprove anything.
But does it matter?
What does what matter exactly?
Does it matter whatever Barry Bonds was doing? Like, do we really care? Are we gonna go to the grave like, oh, juice?
I won't, but I will say the older crowd, just from my experience, because I have a lot of obviously Mets and Yankees fans that I know. And even the Met fans are saying, they're touting Aaron Judge over Barry Bonds. They're trying to forget Barry Bonds and say, Aaron Judge is the clean one. Barry Bonds is filthy, dirty. Let's forget that and hold up Aaron Judge. I would say, look, I can't approve or disprove what happened, what these guys are doing. So I will say congratulations to Aaron Judge. Barry Bonds did what he did. But right now, I'll celebrate Aaron Judge since he did hit 62 last night.
I did also kind of put you in an awkward position because I know as soon as I said Barry Bonds, you looked around because you're in New York and neighbors are like, "What'd you say? What'd you
Yeah.
say? Yo,
You
you better
know,
be careful."
yeah. I can't be too loud. I can't be too. I got neighbors fans who are Yankee fans, so I can't be too loud with my praise for Barry Bonds if I had any.
Let's move on to Tom Brady and his personal life. Look, I don't want to go too deep into it, but do you think it's actually going to have or more of an effect, I should say, in this Buccaneers season and how everything's gonna play out for the team?
It's funny you ask that because I had a betting column that came out today, and we're picking against the spread, and the Buccaneers are favored by 9 points. And I'm not going to write this in the column, but in the back of my head, I'm thinking, okay, Tom Brady, shoulder injury, finger injury, going through some marital issues, divorce lawyers involved. Could the Buccaneers offense suffer because of his off the field issues?
The
And to
offensive
answer,
line isn't as good. I mean, the team
right.
also isn't what
But
it
to
was.
but to answer your question, I know a lot of people may not believe this because Tom Brady is playing till he's 45, but he is human. And he does have emotions and feelings. And I would assume that this is weighing on him, his family, so to speak. Now I want to say breaking apart, but there's some issues, there's some fissures there. You got to believe that even though football players like to say, once I'm on the field, I'm able to zero in and kind of compartmentalize what I'm doing and take off, all the off-field stuff and focus. But again, he is human. Kids are involved, wife is involved, a lot going on. So I would say, to answer your question, the short answer, I would say yes, this is probably going to affect the season. Not to the point where the Bucs are not winning that division, because to me, the division isn't very good. I know people are trying to talk up the Falcons. I'm not buying the Falcons. No offense to Marcus Mariota, but he's injury prone, and eventually you're going to see Desmond Ridder play. So the Falcons are going to kind of drop off. The Saints have had a slow start. Jameis Winston has multiple fractures in his back. They got Andy Dalton starting. I mean, that division is bad. So even with his issues, the Buccaneers should still cruise to a division title in the NFC South.
And let's stop messing around. Let's get into our 3-point stance and get into football. Like on the field things. So yesterday when the news broke that Blake Bortles was retiring, how were you affected when you heard the news, and what were your first thoughts?
I was sad because I thought about that too. What was it, 2017 AFC Championship game where he almost beat Tom Brady and the Patriots, and
They beat the Steelers. He beat Tomlin.
Right. You think about how far the Jaguars and Blake Bortles fell after losing that AFC Championship game. You just think, what could have been if he had gotten to the Super Bowl and actually won one. Now, I will say Blake Bortles is probably one of the best mid-tier quarterbacks I've watched in my lifetime.
Mid-tier, crazy.
No offense to Gardner Minshew, who I still think Minshew should be a star in this league, but Blake Bortles, salute to you. Pretty mid-tier, decent career. Wish you had gone to a Super Bowl at least. Didn't happen. But again, salute to Blake Bortles and his retirement.
Man, Brian Hoyer is listening to this. Pissed off. And I know, like we said here at the beginning of the interview, you can find your work on Sports Now, where you cover the Raiders. And the Raiders' latest addition, Blake Martinez, linebacker, obviously Denzel Perryman dealing with concussion issues, a lot of concussion issues for the Raiders throughout this season so far. But just for those who haven't read the column and those that are watching and listening now, what impact do you think and what does Blake bring to the team and to the defense for the Raiders?
He's exactly the, I wouldn't say carbon copy of Denzel Perryman, but just like if you think of Denzel Perryman as a leader on the football field and a tackling machine, that's what Blake Bortles brings. I believe he had 4 consecutive seasons, 144 tackles. Everyone could see that. He's a 2-down linebacker, not much in coverage. He's not going to cover Travis Kelce, so please don't expect that on Monday Night Football. But what he can do is get that defensive line, because when you're out there with a Chiefs offense, you're playing chess with Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy. And you need a middle linebacker who knows what's going on, can diagnose plays pretty quickly. And that's what you have in Blake Bortles, because no offense to Blake
Martinez, sorry. He's on
Blake
the
Martinez.
He's
Bortles is still on my mind. Exactly. Blake Martinez. Bortles is not going to be playing middle linebacker, people. Scratch that. But yes, Martinez being out there in the middle of that defense is going to help them get a line and play that chess game with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, because those two, that pair together, they've been gashing defenses for years. And you need your defense to be on point when you get on the field in the bright lights of Monday Night Football. So Blake Martinez, if he has to play, can fill that role in the middle and get those guys aligned and get those guys in the right spots to make plays.
And obviously, Raiders just finally got their first win of the season. Not anything anyone expected in the first month of the new regime. And I think I called the Broncos, the Raiders win over the Broncos. To me, it was the Josh Jacobs game. I think he had 33 carries, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns, which has led to a lot of conversation this week because even in the Tennessee game, it was odd. I think he only had 13 rushes, but he had around 80 yards. And he's really been working his ass off throughout this season, which going into it, I know that we talked about it, that running back room was crowded. Brandon Bolden, the new pickup, Zamir White that they drafted. So with his performance, do you think there's any regret with the Raiders not picking up that 5th-year option? And also, if this goes on the path that it is, where he's having a very successful season, do you think this changes anything in terms of the Raiders maybe trying to sign him and now having to compete with the rest of the league going like, yo, this is a premier running back?
I don't think there's any regret. Josh McDaniels has a history or track record of mixing running backs in and out. So I just think he just didn't want to pay what the 5th-year option would have been for Josh Jacobs. I don't know, 8 to 10 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah. But he switches out running back. So I don't think they regret that because of the money. Now, as far as the player is concerned, if he continues to play at this level, of course, I think they're going to approach him about trying to come back. But I think it all depends on what Josh Jacobs wants. Does he want to go get the bag and get the most he can get at his age and say, okay, this second contract is for my last time getting a big contract. I'll go to wherever pays me the most money. Now, if it's not about the money for him and he just says, look, the Raiders went, I don't know, 10-7, 11-6. I know that seems hard to believe right now, but it's still possible. They go 10-7, 11-6 and go to the playoffs, and he goes, look, I want to stay with a playoff team and continue to build what we have. I think it's all up to him, but I think he would have to take less money because I'm sure other teams will be willing to pay him a lot more. I will say this, that before the season started, I said, regardless of what happens, I think Josh Jacobs will go somewhere else. He won't be a Raider because let's say he runs for 1,200 yards this year. He's going to command a lot of money, and the Raiders probably not going to want to pay that, considering all the guys they paid this all season. If he underperforms, then the Raiders go, well, we can replace him. We drafted Zamir White. We can draft another running back in the 3rd or 4th round. We can sign a cheap free agent running back who's going to cost us a lot less than Jacobs and still get 80% of the production. So I think either way, I just don't see Josh Jacobs back in Las Vegas unless he's willing to take a significant pay cut to stay.
And before we get into this Monday night football game against the Chiefs and what your keys are, kind of want to backtrack a little bit because I just said it. First month of the season is complete. I don't think anyone thought that 1-3 would be a possibility. Granted, even talking with Scott, you look at these games, a play or two away from being 3-0. Everything could have been flipped. These were all close games. I think the biggest point differential was the 6-point win that the Cardinals had in overtime with the comeback. But to you, in this first month of the regime and with McDaniels as the new head coach, where do you see it big picture wise for the Raiders?
Big picture wise, I think it's still coming together. I know Raiders fans don't like to hear that. They don't want to hear the P word, which is patience. I know people were thinking of the P word, but patience. They don't want to hear patience because they've been patient for how many decades now, waiting for a team to break out and win a playoff game. So I think it's still coming together. And I know Josh McDaniels, this isn't his first rodeo. Had a 10-year in Denver that basically went in the dumpster fire, but I think the gap between his time in Denver being a head coach and now being Las Vegas Raiders head coach, he's learning the process again. How to balance his offense is the first thing. You mentioned it. Getting the run game involved. I know he says, look, we fell behind, so we couldn't commit to the run. But my thing is, as I said with Scott and Silver and Black today, you don't start off with a 2-touchdown deficit. You don't start off down 10 to 14 points. You can run the ball early and establish that early. If it falls apart and you fall behind, then you go to the pass game, gets close, get back to the run game. But I think he's still working with the balance. But big picture wise, I still believe this team is on the right track. I know that's hard to believe now with the 0-3 start going, then winning that last game 1-3. Now you could possibly drop to 1-4 against the Chiefs. Who knows? Upset win will probably bring some optimism back. But even if you go 1-4 into the bye, I still think the future is bright because you still have core pieces there. Max Crosby, Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow. Those guys, Darren Waller, still in the mix and getting extensions too on top of that. So you still have your core players regardless of what happens this year. You can always build on whatever their record finishes in after 2022.
And you bring it up after the bye, they play the Texans. I think the schedule gets a little bit easier than what it's been. But worst case scenario, in terms of McDaniels, Is there any thought in your mind that after a year he could be gone? I don't want to be negative, but if he goes 6-11 or whatever, like to me, although I understand because you don't go out and get Chandler Jones, you don't get Devontae Adams and all these things and expect to just chill and be 5-11. I know that's not what anyone wants, but it's still his first year and it's still a new system. How much leeway is there any chance that he could be gone after a year?
I'm going to be bold and I say 0% chance. I mean, if you've been a Raider fan for the past, 10, 15 years, how well has it worked when the Raiders have just revolved the door of head coaches and players? That hasn't worked. So I think you have to stick it out. If you're Mark Davis, you hired Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler, the GM, as a package deal from the Patriots. I don't think you just say, okay, after 1 year, we have to go in another direction. Unless there's one caveat, I'll say 1% chance. Unless Sean Payton comes knocking on that door. If Sean Payton comes knocking on that door and says, look, I specifically want to coach the Raiders. Unless that happens, you stick with Josh McDaniels. Because I can say for sure that Sean Payton today is a better head coach than Josh McDaniels. We've seen what Sean Payton has done with the New Orleans Saints in his time there. And we see what the New Orleans Saints offense is now that he's gone. So unless Sean Payton comes knocking on Mark Davis's door, you stick it out with Josh McDaniels regardless of what the record is at the end of this season.
Moton joining us. Be sure to follow him at Moton, Silver and Black Today, and Audacy Original Podcast. Find his work at Bleacher Report, Sports Not. Before we get you out of here, Monday Night Football. Raiders going into Kansas City. I think last year, that was the game where the Raiders stepped on the logo and then got their ass beat 41 to whatever, right?
Shout out to Yannick Ngakoue.
Yeah, I think
that charge. Yep.
Yeah, I think that was the game. Obviously it's a rivalry game. The Chiefs, look, the NFL's random. They just lost to the Colts 2 weeks ago, who couldn't beat the Texans and the Jags. No disrespect to the Jags, because y'all out here. But they woke up, it seems like. And Mahomes had his iconic play with the flip, and it was just tremendous. So Is there any hope? What are your keys for the Raiders to pull off an upset?
I say there's always hope, because 2 years ago, the Raiders beat the Chiefs at Arrowhead. Now, I know there weren't as many fans. It wasn't a sold-out stadium at Arrowhead. But they did win the game with, I believe, a rookie Henry Ruggs blowing the top off that defense. And now Henry Ruggs is not there with an unfortunate incident. But now they have Devontae Adams. Hunter Renfrow went back to practice, could be available. Darren Waller has to get his act together, but he's still a weapon you have to account for. Mac Hollins has been a revelation. So you have the offensive firepower to compete with the Chiefs. When you have that offensive firepower, there's always a chance. Here's the problem. As you just said, the Chiefs looked pretty good after they got beat by the Colts. I think Tampa Bay Buccaneers have one of the top 3 defenses in the league, and they've ran through the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Sunday Night Football. And the Raiders defense, I don't think it's as bad as people say it is, but to me, they have a bad half, good half. They'll shut out a team in the first and second half, but in the other half, they'll allow 14, 17 points. I wrote a piece before the last game they played. I believe they allowed 2 touchdowns in a half. Let me rephrase that. It was against the Chargers, 1 touchdown in the second half. Cardinals, they shut them out in the first half. The Titans, I believe they allowed 1 touchdown in the second half. So again, bad half, good half.
Not 60-minute football.
You're right. So they played 1 complete game against the Denver Broncos. If they play a complete game as they did against the Denver Broncos, maybe a little better in the red zone, because I believe they were 2 for 5. They got to start trading in more field goals for touchdowns, because if they go 2 for 5 in the red zone against the Chiefs, they're not going to win that game. They have to be about 75, 80% in the red zone. If they can do that, they have a chance to win this game. What I will say is, what I don't want to see from the Raiders is them getting blown out, because you bring in Chandler Jones. I know he's underwhelmed a lot of people. You bring in Devontae Adams, you extend Max Crosby, you extend Darren Waller, you extend Hunter Renfrow, you do all of these things. If you're not on the same tier with the Chiefs, there's a problem.
And
no
before
blowouts, no blowouts on Monday, please.
Okay, so we'll leave you with this. Number 1, I need a prediction for Monday night. And number 2, be sure to plug everything, because you're all over the place, Mo. So where can we find you, and what's the latest with the podcast and your writing and everything?
Raider fans are not going to want to like to hear this, but I had the same prediction on Silver and Black Today with Scott Branson. I had the Chiefs winning 35-27. If you look at my betting column over there on Bleacher Report, as Adrian is crying, weeping in his Raider Apparel, I had the Chiefs covering the spread. Chiefs are favored by 7, but I just feel like the Raiders defense is not there yet. I did drop a stat. Travis Kelce against the Patrick Graham defense last year when Patrick Graham was defensive coordinator for the Giants. Travis Kelce only had 4 catches for 27 yards. So that's important to note. If they can slow him down, again, they have a chance, and I could be wrong. But I do have the Chiefs winning 35-27. Where can you find me? As I said, Bleacher Report, all things NFL. I'm a pretty fair guy when it comes to the Raiders. If you're not all about fluffy pillows and unicorns and rainbows and you want to hear the truth, tune in for that over there on Bleacher Report, my Raiders coverage. Sports, not specifically Raider coverage. I drop 2 columns a week there, sometimes more, depending on the flow of the week, depending what's going on with the Raiders, their injuries, their transactions, could be more than 2 columns. Silver and Black Today with Scott Branson. I'm on 3 shows a week there. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we do a pretty fun mailbag day. We open the show talking about food and all sorts of things. We do that during our mailbag day. So tune in for that. We have a lot of fun there, and that is growing. So again, tune in.
Hardworking man. A lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm
hardworking man. We appreciate you making time for us. Look, the part of the Silver and Black Today podcast that truly enjoys the WNBA and isn't a hater. Mo, we thank you so much for the time. We'll check in after the bye week. As always, thank you so much.
Appreciate you, Adrian. Thanks for having me.
Of course.